Hello, everybody, and welcome to our November webinar of the Signify Academy. And thank you for joining us today. Sustainability is core to our purpose. Not only our innovative, environmentally friendly products that improve lives, but also how we operate as a company. We produce high-quality, energy-efficient lighting products, systems, and services, and Signify achieved 100% carbon neutrality in its operations in September 2020. Through our Brighter Lives, Better World 2025 program, we aim to double our positive impact on the environment and society in 2025. Just a few more numbers. LED represented 83% of our sales back in 2022, and we are the leader in connected lighting in the home, in cities, and in the workplace. Of the 26 billion light points in the world, 120 million are using our connected lighting technology. And at the end of 2022, our circular revenues were at 29%, and we have less than 1% waste to landfill. But let's go to the topic of today's webinar, talking about sustainability. Remarkable lighting sustainably printed. Presented by Bart Maeyens, the leader of our 3D printing business. 3D printed lighting is the sustainable choice in lighting, eliminating waste by using recycled materials, contributing to the circular economy by design, and reducing CO2 emissions by printing locally. Instant development and printed at lightspeed. What are the possibilities and impossibilities, the do's and the don'ts? His talk will be a door opener, demystifying 3D printing and hopefully inspiring you all. So Bart, the digital stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Jaap. If all goes well, I am now able to share my screen. There we go. All right. Well, demystifying, my God. What I will try to do is, for those people that haven't yet been close to 3D printing, I will just highlight it in a nutshell, what it is, how it works. I will tell you what we are able to do today with what we have. And then, of course, as Jaap has introduced, as Signify, we are a company that holds sustainability and moving towards true circularity as one of the highest priorities. So I will definitely deep dive on what we can do there. Last but not least, because you've taken the time on a pretty cold Thursday evening, I will also give you a slight sneak peek of what is in the kitchen for the nearby future. But first, as I promised, just a short highlight. What is it now that we do? Well, we take waste, and as you can see where the number 1 is mentioned, that waste, which typically for us is polycarbonate waste, is turned into flakes. Those are further granulated so that you can compare it more or less like rice grains. And these are then heated up and pulled into a wire. That wire, as you can see on the top right, number 4, is fed into machines. And then it's up to the customers. They go online via our configurators. They select the product of their liking. And we send a signal to our printers, who then start putting that filament into the beautiful shape that they have selected. Now, that was in a very quick nutshell. You will see later on there is a bit more elaborate and better guidance. Now, promised you to tell you what we were able to do today. This is just a highlight of the product families that are offered. As you can see, with 3D printing, much more than people would assume, you can make technical, functional lighting, which such as track lighting, downlights, and of course, we can also add to that decorative lighting. The beauty as Signify, that always comes together, of course, with all the technology that you can imagine. Best in class quality of light, connected solutions through Interact, or when it's lamp-based, it can be a hue bulb. That is a full portfolio. But the main thing I want to underline is that most people underestimate what is already there today. It's a vast portfolio with a lot of opportunities. Now, I would be the first to then mention, well, all nice and great, Bart, but you know, there's plenty of track lights, there's plenty of downlights, and my God, there are decorative luminaires without an end. Yeah, why would we then, for our retail environments, hospitality, office environments, consider going to Philips My Creation, taking a Signify 3D printed solution? Fair question. Now, I'll try to highlight that, but before I do that myself, from the creative and sustainable angle, I just want to give you this 1 minute and a half, 2 minutes video that already shows you in a nutshell what it can be.
Imagine designing outside of the box, creating beyond every catalogue, dreaming out loud in every dimension. Feel the absolute freedom to follow your vision and reshape the future. More durable, more beautiful. Designing for a circular economy with significantly reduced waste and emissions, layer upon layer, from sustainably sourced materials. Discover unique textures and amazing shapes that puts your brand in the spotlight like never before. It's time to create your own signature. It's time for the big shift. Philips My Creation. Remarkable lighting, sustainably printed.
So, maybe I will take out of that short video one sentence. It's truly designing for a circular future. Now, designing, we all know, is a very intense process, because typically when we design, and that doesn't just restrict itself to lighting, there is a whole process of creating people coming together that very often start from a sketch. Maybe these days they will start from one of the many AI tools that are around to enhance or speed up their process. And then all of that is trying to be set into reality. How does that look for a customer? We segmented it, we think about channels, all of it comes together in what we typically call a value proposition. That's phase one, and that's already pretty intense. And I think these days, most companies will then start to use 3D printers, because at that point, they hand it over to the engineers. And the engineers typically in 2023, I'm convinced that 60 to 70% of the companies that are in making industry, companies that are in lighting industry, will for sure then have engineers using a 3D printer to make the first mock-up. Well, we're no different, we do the same. And then with those demonstrators, you venture through a process of engineering success, failure, until the point you have a successful product. That's the end of phase two. And then we go to phase three, which is, of course, it needs to be industrialized. A whole bunch of people try to connect with the right suppliers. There are molds being made. There are agreements being made. There is a supply chain set in motion. Things are sourced left and right from various countries, and then it all needs to land into that factory. Then you activate it to the market, and then when the orders come, it's made and off we go. We all know how this works. Now, what if I could tell you that from today forward, that should never be the case anymore? Number one, the whole story I told you always comes with constraints. Now, I'm here to tell you that constraints can be alleviated. Instead of always having to choose from a very minimal palette, we offer by nature, as you can see on my screen, a much broader palette, because shifting in a 3D printing production, that I will highlight later on, is far easier, which again, for the people that are working in that first stage of creating, they are reflecting, designing, trying to find that new connection between the element, the luminaire, and the interior or the purpose. Well, we can now tell them, hey, the door is much wider open than ever before. We can strengthen that by also adding things that are virtually impossible. One of the steps that I mentioned, as soon as the engineer is done, things are industrialized. Now, typically when we industrialize, that means a selection has been made and there is a mold, there is a machine setup, there is a process that is fixed. It's very expensive and extensive to then change any variable in that process. You can see here on my screen, these are the standard textures that we offer, meaning every luminaire, every product that we have now has more than 16, and it can actually ramp up higher than that, but standardized 16 various textures, which some of them were simply not even feasible with a mold before. Others were, but the main important message is in the creative process, in the selection process, you can now easily add them without any consequences, neither in the production, neither in the cost for the customer. So colors and textures suddenly become something that are simply a direct part of the criteria that people can select from. This is an example of a screen print that I took from what we typically call our product selectors. In this case, surface mounted luminaire, and you can see the immediate choice is between the various colors. Underneath that, people can select the textures. It goes without say that it all goes together within our company with all the selections about lighting, lumen outputs, CCTs, variable dimming or connected options. That is, of course, always integrated as it should. But the main message here is that it creates not just a standardized product that instead of offering a black, white, and gray variety, but next to that, a color palette, all within the same lead time, all within the same price. Add to that, that suddenly the surface can have, in our case, 16 standardized textures that come without any infringement again on the lead time, on the cost. And that is opening the door for the creative people, because that's how interior decoration works. There is numerous varieties in textiles, in structures on tiles, wood panels, concrete surfaces, all of them. People are spending tremendous amounts in diligently selecting what goes together and why it's there. We now allow within luminaire selection to match that perfectly. And I love to show this image. Although it's something, that we all shouldn't do too much eating fast food. Although, if we're all honest, we do take that guilty pleasure now and then again. This is an example where you see dependence in the middle with McDonald's, where we simply created everything from scratch for the customer. And where we were able, with those textures, those color variances, to create exactly what they wanted to match their interior, their atmosphere. Now, that's very decorative from that angle. What I also want to show you is that that angle of allowing people to change aspects. And I've now mentioned color and texture as two examples, but it goes beyond that. Imagine a world where with a downlight, you can do this. So suddenly we can not only tell people, feel free to adapt finishes, we are able to adapt exactly according to the need of that specific project. Now, we all know that one of the major challenges we have across the globe is energy transformation. One of the things that has been implemented in Europe this year was the compact fluorescence ban, taking out bad performant luminaires and forcing the market by no longer relamping them or offering the lamps to relamp them, forcing people to choose the LED energy efficient solution. Well, 70% of those exact same people will run into an issue that they bought luminaires 20, 15, 10 years ago, where they might not find the exact matching size today with the LED variant. That's what we can solve. We can eliminate the simple fact that people will need to redo the entire project, but up to the millimeter can just tell us what they need and ensure that it's there. And the beauty of that all is, it doesn't really matter if you require 10 pieces or you require 10,000 pieces. It is done with the same ease. It is done within the same kind of deliverables, because that's what 3D printing can do with lighting. And that is what conventional technologies are limited today. That's what conventional technologies in manufacturing would make exorbitantly expensive. Now, that was the first part. And I hope that with that, I kept my promise in telling you what are we able to do today. And I think I highlighted already, definitely from the creative and in some case the functional angle, what benefits 3D printed luminaires can bring. But I'll tell you something very personal and honest. I actually, before I joined a year ago to 3D printing in Eindhoven, in the Signify high-tech campus, I actually had a great job with lovely people around me, also in the lighting industry, creating as much beautiful high-end luminaires. So people ask me, why did you change? You had, in Belgium, a much better cuisine, although I will admit to all the Dutch people in this meeting, yeah, your stroopwafels aren't half bad. But nevertheless, this second part is why I really made the change. I am fundamentally convinced, and I hope all of you are too, that you don't need any more media. You don't need any more proof by simply being outside throughout the year to know that we have an enormous problem. And I really want to be one of those people that stops debating the problem, but starts looking forward on how can we solve it. And so saving us all is what 3D printed lighting can offer as a small part of that puzzle to save us all. Here are some highlights, what it can tangibly, calculated in a lot of detail, can do. Number one, it starts with waste. Number two, it can make much more intricate components, and it can ensure that a luminaire can actually then, at the end of life, be easier disassembled. We were already, as Signify, a CO2 neutral company, but now we can level up with 3D printed luminaires taking down carbon emissions even 76% lower. We can go in transport lower because we can get closer to where the market is. We can eliminate stocks. We can start using our own waste that we create in our factory back into the luminaires. Now, this all sounds nice in a single slide, but let me show you some more tangible proof on how we actually do that today and how that looks like. those were quite a lot of points, and I love to be very transparent and walk you through diligently, because these days we are all confronted with a lot of claims, a lot of communication about sustainability, a lot of claims towards circularity. So let me be very transparent and very diligently in telling you how we do it and what we do. Here you can see a typical source of where polycarbonate, post-industrial polycarbonate to be more precise, can come from. Building industry has used it. We all know these kind of surfaces, and that can be reclaimed quite easily. Another example that we have is also biocircular. You saw in the movie it was framed as 55% biocircular. What does that mean? There are various processes working with oils, working in oil industries where there are residue products. These residue products can still be used and claimed, and instead of making them go to waste, ending up in mainly burning facilities, you can turn them in useful polymers for polycarbonate. And then, of course, there is also post-consumer. A great example is the fishing nets, as you have seen them. And lately we've added one more to the family, which is water jugs. Now, all of that is substantiated with certification, because we're very weary that a lot of people have made claims about recycled, reusable content in their products, about the percentage that they have in their materials. That's why you see on the top left screen that we're very proud to show that our factories go through the ISCC audits and will pass by the end of this year all criteria, so that there is a tangible third-party confirmed audit and certification of our content that we use to print our luminaires. Second, it really has an impact on how many components you need to make. It's often overlooked, but quite a lot of man-made products have a lot of components in them. And one of the things in a more circular, sustainable world will also be eliminating that. I will show you at the very end a very tangible example on my screen, but for now, you can see this image where we can eliminate, as I mentioned, 40% of components. Now, you don't need to have a rocket science degree to know that fewer components can also lead to an easier maintenance, an easier disassembly of a product, whereas those individual components are not only fewer, but are more intelligent, and because of that, not glued, very pure in their material, and hence much more easier to split towards the appropriate recycling stream. And in our case, we're very proud that our parts can even be claimed back because we work with polycarbonate in a high grade level. So those can be reused either in our printing process or in a third-party printing process. We can make the world, as Signify has already proven, not just carbon neutral as a company, but can go beyond. How do we do that? Well, it's plain and simple. These components that you see that are 3D printed, in this particular case, it's the luminaire body, it's the front part of the optics. They are all printed where you need them. You will see in one of my next slides that we already cover the most important and viable continents that we serve today. But of course, we will not stop. We will continue to put our footprint where the market is. Printing close by, where the consumers are, where the professional customers are, is the solution to reduce the carbon footprint. And if I'm very, very selfish, to reduce every Friday when I drive from Eindhoven to Bruges, to reduce the amount of traffic I have because the roads are filled with trucks. It is no longer required in a 3D printed, sustainable and circular world. And then, of course, if you're close to the customer, it will not be a surprise to you that, of course, the delivery and the footprint of that delivery automatically goes down. So it's a supply chain and delivery game that will bring down the amount of traffic, the amount of goods that we need, and that into combination has huge impact. And here you can see very transparently a map of where we are today. These are just a few locations. We will, of course, set up according to the market, according to the demand, also according to the acceptance of our sustainable towards circular solution. One of the things that I'm brutally honest about today, one of the biggest hamperings, is that not enough people are aware that this solution is there. That's also one of the reasons we have this lovely webinar. But awareness is one of the critical items because people are simply not aware that you can have a track light for the same price with much more customization options with the best-in-class Signify lighting quality, top-in-class technology, actually manufactured on the continent where you live. Not everyone is aware. I mentioned the carbon neutral production and beyond, and this is also something I like to highlight. You're moving towards an empty warehouse. Now, I'm not gonna lie, of course, the warehouse is not as empty as in the picture. We still need to warehouse our LED boards. We need to warehouse some of the electronic components because they tend to have a rather long lead time, but that's it. All other parts, more and more, can be printed. And that means that except those few electronic parts that we need to source, we can really start emptying the racks. We can literally, whenever the customer places an order, push the button of the machines, start printing the exact volume, what the customer demanded, and ensure that there is zero obsolescence, zero additional, and over time come to the fact that there is an empty factory, which again to me is also an important indirect effect which we will have. We will reduce the need for warehousing surface, which, let's face it, our planet and viable surface is so important that we can now make sure and start that not only every nation can reshore their manufacturing, but can actually reshore it in a location that doesn't require huge surfaces. That's why 3D printing in the making industry, not just in lighting, is the future. And I told you about it doesn't produce any waste in the production itself. You see on the left-hand side a picture of what we've, and I don't know if everyone will find it as funny as we do, but we at least thought it was funny. We call this Granny our super granulator, but it is a granulator machine. Just like in any production process, sometimes there is a small failure in the print. It could be a small spot. It could be that there is a small default. It could be a wrong printer setting. Now, the good news is that can go in the factory immediately into the granulator, and then it's processed, as you have seen at the start, back to the granulate. It's pulled back into a wire and can easily be reused in a new luminaire. On the bottom right, some of you might now think, hey, why is he showing this very small image of a gray track spot? Well, I like to highlight that. And there's two things I need to mention about that little gray spot. We always have the ambition and will strive to full circularity. One of the items that comes to mind when you talk about full circularity is not just everything I mentioned, but is at the end of life, if a customer would decide to no longer use the luminaire, to claim it back, and not just claim it back to disassemble it and put all the components in the appropriate waste stream to be recycled, but be part of the recycling process and take our polycarbonate and reprint ourselves. That little picture on the right-hand side is one of the first that was reprinted with luminaires that were 3 to 4 years old and that delivered that product. It was actually a decorative product that was pendant in a Dutch project, and that has been turned into a 3-phase track luminaire solution. Now, the second thing I need to mention about this, very good news for all of you listening. We don't need to establish that today as a huge business yet. Why? Well, thank God we've selected polycarbonate to print with. Thank God we are Signify in our luminaire and lighting quality. Most of our products are happily functioning with the customers, and we don't assume in the next 2 to 3 years big volumes to return. But nevertheless, important to demonstrate to you that we are capable technically of doing it. And here you see the full picture of Granny in motion. All of that allows us more and more to venture out from the biocircular materials with 55% recyclable content, from the post-industrial with 65 recycled percentage content. You saw the fishing nets, up to brand new launched solutions like these. So I think 2 parts. I kept my word, I hope. And now it's time to look a bit forward. I'm pretty sure that some of you are interested, how will it look like? But maybe some of you, while I was talking and presenting, have also framed in their minds, does that mean that everything is possible? Does that imply that we can now print everything and anything? Well, before I show you a bit of the veil of the future, let me voice a few of those questions myself. Number one, no, we cannot print everything. What are the restraints? There are some dimension restraints. Printing in the large volume and the quality that we do with the material that we do does not allow us to go much beyond 1 meter diameter today. I think up until 80 centimeters as we can is already a lot. We can solve a lot of lighting solutions, but it's fair to mention that that is where today the threshold lies. That doesn't imply that we're looking very attentively and closely to also jump across that boundary, but it is not part of what we do today. A lot of people ask, can you print with any and every material? Well, you've seen we focus on polycarbonate as our main material. There's a good reason behind that, because it is high qualitative polymer. It allows for longevity in usage for the customer. And let's be honest, the entire journey towards circularity starts with a product that has a long lifetime. So that polycarbonate is the key why we do that. However, there are nylons, there are PETs that can be used, but not everything. One of the things, for instance, that today is not usable, and that is very often asked, can we take any plastic bag and can that be recycled and chopped up and made into a filament? The answer is no. It doesn't work like that. The answer is also fair to refer back to the percentages I mentioned. You've heard me saying very honestly and openly, it is 55% biocircular. It is 65 post-industrial. In the case of the nylon fishy filament, it is 100%. But it is percentages. That means still a part of it is virgin material being made. It's also fair to mention that. The good news is the needle is moving fast upwards, but it is only fair to mention that it requires a percentage of something else, again, to ensure that what comes out of the printing process is a qualitative product that can have a longevity in usage. So not everything is possible today. One of those questions we also very often get, can you make any color and any shape? Absolutely not. Yes, theoretically, we could make any color on the color spectrum that you can invent. But my challenge to you is, if you already know that we have those 12 standardized colors, we do have roughly 30 extra colors on demand. So there's already a palette that goes roughly towards 40 colors. With that, you can intercombine 16 standardized textures. That gives you multiple hundreds solutions already there. So the first challenge is always to the creative people, please look at what is already there. The second honest answer is, why do I not advocate that? Although technically it would be possible. Well, because it miscommunicates what it's about. It's not just about now suddenly making every color in the world, because a color has an impact on how sustainable a material is. Every color you make, you need additives to make that color. Our color palette has been screened, has been ISCC certified. Every new color that you make, it's quite an intense process to do so. We can, but it is not by nature something that is off the shelf and easy. That's why I tell people, refrain. So those are some boundaries. There are some more, but I'll leave those for your questions that you might have in the end. And then I'll come to the final part of what I wanted to show you today, is give you a tip of the veil, what it's going to be about in the future. And one of the things that it's going to be about is definitely the angle of the new way of designing, thinking about designing luminaires and the creativity. And a great example is this. The reason I like to show that luminaire is because it's an archetype that we all know. It's an industry standard, luminaire that most manufacturers have. And again, you might consider, well, then, Bart, why did you and your team also make it? Exactly for what you saw. Everything you find on the market, it's either a black or a white trim, and that's about it. It's actually a product that in its construction is hugely energy consuming, because almost all of them in the market start with an aluminium extrusion that is being bent, welded, sanded, treated, painted, and then you only have the rim of the luminaire. Those are highly intense in CO footprint, because those volumes are then transported throughout the supply chain and then land into the assembly and then go to the customer. Now, you've heard me saying how much we can make the difference. We don't have all those treatment processes. There is no pre-extrusion. There is no welding. There is no treatment. There is no paint. There is no transport between various suppliers before it comes into the mounting facility. We print it on demand in the facility. And then, of course, you saw, which is the true benefit. It now opens the door in dimensions, in finishes that you can't find on the market. So suddenly an archetype can not only become a sustainable archetype, but it also becomes a remarkable sustainable archetype. And that is the future. That is what you will see in the lighting industry by Philips MyCreation. And I hope you will see it across the world, that we can get much more creativity, much more beauty, much more elegance selected by yourselves in easy to use configurators online, not affecting your lead time, not affecting the price of what you need to pay, not being dependent on you having to order enormous quantities. That's what the world will look like with 3D printed solutions. And that is just to paint a picture. That's what people will have out of the same factory, as much the functional luminaires as the very creative luminaires. Very colorful, playful, texturized, shaped, minimalist. It does not matter. It is possible, and it can be done even better than we do it today. Because of course, the future is only going to look brighter. How come I make the statement it's going to look brighter? And it's not because I work in lighting, and we in Signify are, of course, one of the most capable in getting quality of light, efficiency of light to the levels as no one else has seen. That's not the point. The point is really that the printers are excelling in their capability. The printers are excelling in their speed, making it more and more durable, faster and faster, and also more and more affordable. I'm always proud to tell people when they ask me, okay, Bart, and what does this now cost? Because it's a great story, but for sure there must be a price to all that sustainable benefit, to all that circular benefit. And the true answer is, what if we don't do this? What will then be the price for us all? And then the answer that people want to hear, and it doesn't really affect the cost price in your pocket anyway. But I do hope you remember the first thing I said. What is going to be the price we all pay if we don't do this? Much more important. But it doesn't come with an extra cost to mention worthwhile. What you will see the future, I'm actually someone that sees the future quite positive. I see a world where all the legislative bodies are actually moving their ass. They're never as fast as we would have wanted to. But for once, I want to highlight that we can say a lot negative about politics, but there is a lot positive to mention. They have come together to ban compact fluorescence. There are better and better stringent laws about energy efficiency requirements across the globe. There are strides being made on how we need to treat our waste and how it is actually being split, recycled. There are enormous investments going on legislative and individual basis or industrial basis to start building great facilities to help us treat waste and make them into viable resources. We see that companies, not just ourselves, but many others, are offering refurbishment programs where the first reflex is, let's not throw the product away, but let's upgrade it. We ourselves have already for every product a disassembly manual, so that the right to repair, the right to refurbish, which is also going to become a law, that actually becomes reality, and that instead of throwing away, we will first ask ourselves the question, how can we use that? When we then do throw it away, that it's done in the best possible manner. Disassembled as it should, all the different components in the right waste stream, and then reused. I'm looking at a future where I now already see that post-industrial polycarbonate is actually increasing in the price per kilo that companies are willing to pay, such as ourselves, has already doubled in the last year. So there is a viable economy behind it that is making the future look bright, which might lead that your waste is going to become valuable. And that's when it's really going to start to work, because let's be honest, if the economic model works, then the entire model will work.